Welcome back to the second hour of the show with no name for, hey, I'm putting myself out of the camera, for January 13th, Friday the 13th, 2012. I'm Bob Going with Gavin Murdoch and Jim Nikosha, and Robert Hessel, our city historian, is here to add something important, but we're going to keep me in the picture as much as possible. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So you enjoy your sandwich. We'll get back to you. Now, I don't know whether we mentioned on the last hour, but he and I are going to be doing that thing at the Century Club next week. And off camera, we've been trying to figure out what it is exactly we're going to.
Where is this going to be off camera that you're going to be doing this?
Century Club, January 22nd, 2 o'clock is for the public, right? And we're going to have some World War II veterans there, and we're going to discuss Amsterdam and World War II, which of course is the primary topic of my upcoming book. What's the name of the book?
Do you have a name for it?
Hey, I do. Where do we find such men? Where do we find such men?
That's the first time I've heard the name of the book.
Oh, that's the name of the book. That's the book. It has been the book with no name up to this point. And you know, I've been working on this for like 4 years now. This book, and it's a lot of interesting things happened to Amsterdam guys abroad, and a lot of interesting things happened in Amsterdam while they were abroad. And I hope to make it 1/4 as interesting as Unbroken, which is the Amsterdam Reads book that everybody in Amsterdam is supposed to be reading and should be, because it is terrific. I have not put it down since I got it late Tuesday.
This is the first I've heard of that book.
It is
How
just
about you,
great,
Gavin?
and it's a story of an American Olympic runner who has kind of a shady background, would you say? You know, I mean, he grew up basically as a juvenile delinquent, and used his survivor tactics to really overcome just about every hardship imaginable going into World War II.
How long was he a POW for?
Oh, that's a long time. 2 years, I think. More than 2 years.
He went down in 43.
Yeah.
Wasn't liberated until 45.
Yeah, more than 2 years, and plus he spent 47 days on the ocean, surviving. And you know, we were talking off camera, but
I know what you're thinking.
Those stories of the sharks just following them the whole way, and then getting bolder and bolder, and jumping up and trying to cut their heads off while they're sleeping. You know, oh my God!
Bumping up on the raft.
Yeah. Oh.
It's hard to envision how people can endure some of the things that they actually have endured without throwing in the towel.
That's it. That's why it's called Unbroken.
It's one of the great.
And plenty of people were broken. Plenty of people were broken. The general's son Harris there. That's was his best friend in the POW camp, and then they broke him, and then he didn't even know which end was up. And then he's standing on the battleship Missouri with MacArthur on September 2nd, 1945. So,
yeah, it's an amazing story. I think that's the longest anyone during World War II spends on a raft.
It may be the longest ever, I guess, is what they said.
That's a long time.
It's the longest that lasted and survived. And one of the interesting things was that he had read Eddie Rickenbacker's story, which was not all that much earlier than Rickenbacker's was late 42, I think.
Yep.
That he his, you know that story. You know, Eddie Rickenbacker was America's ace of aces during World War I. And he's out on some kind of reconnaissance mission for the government in 42, and goes down over the Pacific, and he had what was then thought to be the record of endurance. It was like 27 days aboard the raft, and these rafts had like
no provisions.
No provisions. There was a bunch of ill-tasting chocolate that one of the guys ate the first day while the other two were sleeping. Yeah. Wow. And then it was just like, you know, around the 11th day, somebody kills a bird, and it was too was going to say it's too foul to eat, but essentially it was. They couldn't even eat, so they used it as bait to catch fish. But meanwhile, I mean, at one point they were just so pissed off at the sharks that they start grabbing them by the tail and throwing them in the boat. And boat, it's a canvas raft,
which is leaking all the time.
The Japanese bomber comes by and shoots them full of holes. One of the rafts is done. The other one is so full of holes they got to keep constantly pumping the air into it, while one guy tries to plug the holes with the patch kit. Oh, and then they have to like basically turn it over in place while the sharks are circling them.
It's about the most amazing sea survival story, and then it's a lot more than just that.
And it's more than that, yeah.
Of World War II that I've ever read, with the possible exception of what happened to the USS Indianapolis.
Well, yeah, where there were fewer survivors. Yeah. Now, you know who the first captain of the Indianapolis was? Back in like '36 when it was launched, or '34 or something like that. Was John Morris Smealy, of the brother of J. Donald Smealy, who ran the Smealy and Voorhees paper mill, uncle of our friends from school, and one of the pictures that I have in the book is Admiral Smealy in his. He was captain back then. It may have even been commander. I'm not sure. He rose to rear admiral. Picture of him welcoming Franklin Roosevelt aboard the ship. They would pick up Roosevelt at Campobello and float him back to Washington.
It was described as the president's favorite ship.
Yeah. Well, that's why it was his yacht. When he wasn't on the Shangri-La. No, it wasn't the Shangri-La. Was it Shangri-La? No, Shangri-La was Camp David. What was the presidential yacht? It was Roosevelt was the first one with a presidential yacht.
It was a Mayflower, wasn't it?
No. I think it was the same one Nixon used. I think Nixon sold it. Anyway, so this picture in the book is Smealy welcoming Roosevelt aboard, and he's got the old 19th century. It's a great picture. Great picture.
Yeah, I just found out the interesting thing. I had to go through some naval records, something you and I were talking about with the USS Lansing. So I was going through some files on destroyers, and I found the USS Dahlgren, and it lists the commander is Harry W. von Hassel, which is a very unusual name.
The same as yours, or the little...
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
And apparently, so I did a little digging around. It turns out it probably was my uncle. Born in Brooklyn, just a different part of the family. Son of the brother of my grandfather. Yeah. But the family went two different directions. Yeah. It's very unusual to see my name anyplace. And all of a sudden,
and what was his first name?
Harry. Which is kind of, for centuries there have always been Henrys, Heinrichs, Augustus, Augusts. I mean, I got lucky.
I guess you did. Heinrich Augustus.
Heinrich Augustus was my grandfather.
Wow.
And I got lucky. I think they just gave me Henry for a middle name. But yeah, every generation would have those. So Harry's not too far off. It must be the same family. Wow. He's from Brooklyn too. I was thinking, I never knew. I don't think my father ever knew that either. At least he never told me.
Well, in the last couple of days, Nikosha and I have found out how we're related. So.
Circle remains unbroken.
Yeah. Where are you from originally?
Long Island, New York City.
What part of Long Island?
A little tiny town called Farmingdale.
Well, it's not that.
It was when I was there.
Farmingdale is around where the Lindbergh took off, isn't it?
It's not too far. That's about 7 miles down the road. I actually lived. I was stationed in the military, and I had housing at what had been Mitchell Air Force Base. Which used to be a country club, wonderful place. And that was part of the aviation field that was later split up. Mitchell became the military field, Roosevelt became the civil field. And where Lindbergh took off is right now in the middle
of the mall.
In the middle of the mall.
There's a plaque in the middle of the mall, the Roosevelt Mall.
The first big indoor shopping mall in America, and they built it right over where Lindbergh took off. It's funny because you can, and the dip he has to, if you ever see in the movie with Jimmy Stewart, he's running down, he's trying to avoid the trees, but he's also trying to avoid a dip. He's almost at a runway, and that dip is now the Meadowbrook Parkway, cuts right through the area.
Right.
It was well, you know, when I was growing up, Farmingdale still had farms, but it's all gone now. It looks like a part of Queens. The last time I was there, I could hardly recognize it.
We stayed out there when my son got married at the Marriott next to the little airport out there. I forget what the airport is.
Well, that's Republic.
Yes.
That's where the P-47s were made during World War II.
Right.
In fact, there's a great restaurant there called the 56 Fighter Squadron, which is done up like the 56 Fighter Squadron, which had been originally stationed there. They were the first unit to have the P-47 Thunderbolt. And then they were the first unit to go over to England with the Thunderbolt. And so this looks like their base in England. It's got all the old sandbags, the old army uniforms hanging up. You go into the bathroom and Winston Churchill is talking to you know, is on the loudspeaker. You know. That's it. It's a little disconcerting when you're there.
Fear not, gentlemen, a dead bird never leaves its nest.
Yeah, and he's croaking away at you. But, it used to be a favorite of my father's because of the aviation. He was involved in building airplanes. And I would come from work and I'd still be in uniform. And I can't tell you how many times I was amazed at how most Americans don't recognize their current Army uniform. So people would come up and ask me if they could be seated at a particular table. One person.
It's a usher.
So you just look like a maitre d'.
So so I was like, you know, frankly, you can sit any place you like. And she thought, you know, you're really competent attitude here. I want to know, what's the name of your boss? And suddenly, Honorable Harold Marsh, Secretary of the Army. And she still doesn't get it. All she knows is that there are these Army uniforms hanging all over as part of the decor, and I'm wearing one. Of course, mine's green, and that's OD, but other than that, it's a...
Now that's like on the Nassau-Suffolk border, isn't it?
In fact, the Nassau-Suffolk border used to run right down my street. And so,
is that right?
Yeah, people on this side of the street were in Suffolk, and people on this side were in Nassau.
Did you go to different schools?
A lot of friends did, yeah. I went to Farmingdale High School, which was huge. I mean, we had a graduating class of like 1,098. Not the whole school, just my senior class.
Yeah.
And so it was like an assembly line when we got the diplomas. Just like, you know.
You know, when I graduated from SUNY Albany, they included a comic record with the yearbook, and they simulated this. Actually, the yearbook came out before the graduation, but they simulated our graduation, and this is pretty much what it was like at a place where you got 2,000 people in a class. You know, Bachelor of Arts, please rise. You're graduated. Sit down. Bachelor of Science, please rise. You're graduated. Sit down.
During the rehearsals, my principal just went on like the train conductors on the Long Island Railroad, and he'd be like, Massapequa Park, you know, Seaford, Oyster Bay. It was like that. It was incredible. But it was a wonderful place to grow up. It was still very small. Like I said, there were still farms. I grew up next to a real 100-acre woods. Probably the thing that formed my imagination the most as a kid was I could cross the street, run through the neighbor's backyard, up a berm, and I was in 100-acre woods, you know, with fields and trees and everything. The challenge, almost, we had, you know, the witch's cauldron, which was actually some abandoned pot in a circle of trees. Somebody had thrown out a shot put, and we would be like, this is a cannonball from the Civil War, you see, the 8th Artillery. And it was a wonderful playground. And all the mothers would look out for everybody. I mean, my only problem is my mother was a war bride. She was from Georgia. In fact, she was her first job was
Georgia, USA?
Yes, Georgia, USA.
Because he's got a war bride too, only he wasn't in the war.
And in fact, my mother's first job was she was hired as a Scarlett O'Hara lookalike. at the world premiere of Gone with the Wind. My mother greeted people at the theater in Atlanta. You know,
at the grand opening.
at the grand opening.
No kidding.
Wow. Because my mother, when she was young, was a stunning Southern belle. Her
Well,
father-
one would have to assume under the circumstances.
and she had all that Southern. Oh,
So what happened when Vivian Lee showed up? Did they get in a cat fight or what?
no, I know of it. But so yeah, she was a war bride, and they after the war, they had to decide, you know, are we going to go back to Brooklyn, where my dad was from, or are we going to go back to the South? He was an engineer, so he could go, you know, where we wanted, and especially he had helped develop radar, so he was a hot ticket. So they decided to come back north, and then they moved out with the big suburban development of Long Island. And at the end of the day, when it got close to dinner time, you'd hear all the mothers call, and they'd be like, Bobby, Susie, Joey, and then you'd hear Robert Henry. I was the only kid in the whole neighborhood who had two names. and I could tell by the amount of drawl in my mother's voice as to how ticked off she was at me.
She should start reverting.
Yeah. In fact, I remember one time I got so angry at her, and she was starting to drawl real bad, which meant I was getting danger close. So I stomped off barefooted down the stairs into the basement, and I stepped on a wasp.
Oh,
so
jeez.
I was like, I yelled, you know,
Oh my God.
damn wasp.
Golly gee
And she
whiz.
goes, what'd you call me?
As you pick yourself up from the floor? As you pick yourself up from the floor?
Oh boy, yeah.
You read Bill O'Reilly's autobiography?
He grew up right near me. I think he grew up right near
Well,
me.
that's what I was going to say. Is
He's Hicksville boy,
because
yeah.
his stories sound like yours, because you would be somewhat contemporaries, I would guess.
Yeah.
He was born September 10th, 1949.
He's
Uh-huh.
more my brother's age.
Yeah, he's exactly my brother's age. That's how I came out. I'm not an idiot
Yeah.
savant. That's how I knew that.
As I recall, I think
They were born the same day.
in Hicksville or Jericho, or right somewhere on the border there, which is like, you know, Broad Albion, Perth.
Right.
And Hicksville was the big football rivalry of Farmingdale.
Yeah.
And that's actually interesting. That's where the word hick comes from. Is you know, the theater people in New York would talk about
Right.
being so far away from the center of things.
They're
You might as
hicks.
well be in Hicksville. So that's where hick comes from. But yeah, like, growing up on Long Island was nice. I found it very interesting. Later on, I got stationed at Mitchell Field, which was a beautiful. It's now Nassau Community College, but a certain portion of it, it had been one of the country club Air Corps bases, and I got stationed out there in what had been like a 1920s sergeant's house, but it was a large brick Georgian house with servants' quarters and everything, because this was the real peacetime army. I mean, the officer houses were taken up by the college professors. But we lived right off where the old flight line was, and some mornings I could swear I could almost hear the engines firing up. It was a great place to grow up, and of course when I was a kid that was still an active air base, and we had to keep watching for the planes falling out of the sky, because we were talking about here with Amsterdam, that actually happened on Long Island quite a lot more, because Mitchell was where the air defense for New York City was stationed. So
Now, was that named after the son of the mayor of New York or
yeah,
something like that?
most people get that wrong, and they spell the name wrong.
Because I think it's Billy Mitchell.
Yeah, Billy Mitchell, which is two L's.
Right, this is one L.
John Pervoy Mitchell,
Right.
one L, who was a very progressive reformist mayor of New York, and decided in World War I that he was going to put it all aside and join the air service. And he was in training in Louisiana when he was apparently, we're not sure if he forgot to put a seatbelt on or if the seatbelt broke, but he was doing, you know, barrel rolls, and he fell out of the plane.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
So this was the mayor himself?
He was the mayor.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I thought it was his kid. Yeah. Wow.
No, it was the mayor, and it was a beautiful, beautiful place to grow up. Wonderful place for my son to live, and because suburbia had so changed the face of that part of Long Island, it was like one of the only green, quiet places left. Everything that had been potato fields was now Levittown, and that was an interesting.
And that's where the Ostremskys lived, on
That's
the
right.
potato fields.
Yeah.
That's his story, Carl. Yeah.
Boy, Levittown is an American success story.
Yeah.
If you want to see something about the American spirit, go look at Levittown. I have this great cartoon of when Levittown was first built. you see all these guys getting out of their car and trying to figure out, is this my house?
Yeah,
Right,
always
right,
say
right,
that.
They
right,
always
right,
look the
right.
same.
That's
And
where Larry Guillen was.
Was that?
Larry Guillen and Noreen.
Oh, is that right?
And they're all
Yeah.
from Levittown when they came up here to school.
you may remember the song, Little Houses of Ticky Tacky on the Hill, the folk song. Well, that was Levittown. But if you drive into Levittown now, you can't tell, you can't believe that all these houses look the same.
Right. I had the same experience because I had developments like that where I grew up outside of Albany in Westmere. We lived in an older house, so we were unique. But you go over a couple of blocks, and it was just block after block after block of identical houses. You go back there today, and they're all completely different. And as a matter of fact, it took like maybe 5 years before they were all completely different.
And the amazing
even
thing-
though they're basically the same block.
And this wasn't governmental planning. This wasn't something that's
Right.
organized. It was just people
Want to be
expressing
themselves. That's right.
And it's wonderful. And in fact, an old friend of mine, still down on the island, I had to help her search diligently to find the last remaining intact Levitt home to turn into a museum, to put in the old 1949 hand wringer washer.
We had one of those.
That toaster
So
that
we-
sat on the oven.
We had one of those too. Yeah.
So it's funny when you get old enough now, all the stuff that you remember from a kid now is being put into museums.
Right. Right. I was contemplating the other day along those lines how old we're getting. It was like 2 years ago. I was reading this story about how the oldest person in the world died, which you read 2, 3, 4 times a year because it's always
That's what they do.
when they're the oldest, they're going to die. They're going to die pretty soon. And I suddenly realized that maybe a year earlier, maybe about 3 years ago, the last person in the world who was older than my grandfather would have been had died.
There you go.
And you talk about your grandfather. It doesn't sound like you're separated by very much, but I got friends whose grandparents are still living, a couple.
I don't.
But isn't that amazing? The oldest, and boy, life is short when you start thinking about it in those terms.
Do you ever feel that feeling of I'm kind of leading edge now? I'm the last connection. And
Well, yeah.
If I don't pass these things on,
Right, exactly. I am that way with a lot of stuff.
Too small. You need a bigger one.
I had
Okay,
written,
here you go. How's that one? Is that good?
I had a website some years ago that since got taken down, but I had I put the different letters that I'd found in my grandmother's attic from
And your sandwich comes
and
with, like,
realized that I was the only person in the world who even knew who these people were.
I could not put it on.
That could explain how they were related to us or what the connections were. There was nobody left who even knew who,
when I think about mortality, I'm not scared that I'll be forgotten or that it'll bother my son. He'll get
I don't
on
think
anyway.
I'll be forgotten.
You won't be forgotten. No.
What I'm scared about is that when I go, Mom and Dad and my grandparents, they go too, because if I don't pass that on.
Right.
So I've tried very hard to educate my son about family history and make sure.
Wasn't that the plot of the Bluebird of Happiness with Elizabeth Taylor, young Elizabeth Taylor? She goes into and then she comes across her grandparents who wake up and who are dead, and so we're only alive as long as you think about us, And the third act of Our Town too, I believe.
Third act of Our Town.
Yeah.
Went up and, oh yes.
That opens in the cemetery.
Right, and the older woman is telling the younger woman, relax, calm down, and you'll lose it after a while. You'll learn how to sit here quietly with the rest of us. That's a great play. I love it.
Oh my God, yes. That takes place. I mean, Grover's Corners is fictional, but it's the corner of New Hampshire where we had our family camp. So Monadnock is our mountain, and Monadnock just sits all by itself, this commanding view of 5 states rising out of there. We were near Monadnock. In fact, it was in the same town.
You can buy it by piece. Okay.
But yeah, he gets it just right. He gets it. Yeah.
So you were up by Lake Winnipesaukee?
Well, no, that's a little farther up. We were on Lake Contoocook, and our town makes reference to the Contoocook Railway because the Contoocook River kind of, one way or another, flowed out of the lake and through Jaffrey and Peterborough and up that way, and it flows north actually, and it may flow into Lake Winnipesaukee. I'm not even sure where it ends.
Winnipesaukee, that's Northwest Passage with Spencer Tracy. That's where they were going to meet the British after their raid up at St. Francis.
Tell them we're coming down by Lake Winnipesaukee.
That's right.
I've been reading Teddy Roosevelt's Winning of the West. I'm into volume 3 now, and George Rogers Clark. What
a guy.
What a guy.
Talk about it. It's tough SOB.
What one tough SOB is right. I mean, he takes the Illinois country, single-handedly.
Up to his waist in ice water.
In ice water. Oh yeah, when you get to the details of it, yeah, it's like February, and they're marching through waist-deep water for like 20 miles at a time.
He certainly is an extraordinary gentleman, but also remember, survival at that time for anybody was extraordinary compared to what we are.
Right.
So the step from him to go normal to extraordinary is a lot smaller step than from us to go to that point as well.
For sure.
You know,
for sure.
But his battle on snowshoes up at Lake George, the stuff he wrote the manual for the Rangers that is still used
Robert
today.
Rogers, yeah.
He was a tough young man.
That's a movie. And I try to explain to younger people how old I really am. Sometimes they don't get it, so I have to explain things like, I remember when TV was only 3 channels.
Oh,
and they're like, no. And
2. We remember 2.
We had 2
We had 2 until ABC came out.
New York City.
Utica.
I said, I remember when TV wasn't on 24 hours a day. Hey, listen, do you know what a test signal is? Okay, no, we're not old enough to have this conversation. But one of the movies that I used to set my alarm clock to see was Northwest Passage.
That was one of the first ones that was on.
If it was on, it'd be on the early show, then it'd be on the late show, then it'd be on the late show, then it finally would show up at 4 o'clock. Whenever it was on, because there was no VCRs, no DVDs, I'd set the alarm clock to get up and watch that again, because it just got to me. So when I finally got a chance to show it to my girlfriend, I thought, oh, she's going to be really impressed with this. All she can think of is that scene where the guy breaks his ankle in the swamp.
Yeah.
And Roger says to her, well, got enough tobacco? Take an extra chaw. I can't slow down. And my girlfriend's like, he's going to die. And I said, yeah, he knows that. And she's like, how can you do those things? And I said, it's the nature of the beast. And so she's like, don't ever offer me a chaw of tobacco.
That's the giveaway, huh?
If you offer me a chaw of tobacco, I know I'm going to die.
I think it's like the guy from the guy in World War II in Saipan, from Troy, the same thing, right?
Oh, Thomas Baker.
Yeah.
Another hero of mine. You guys know
the story?
No,
go ahead, you tell it.
Thomas, actually, years ago I was a New York State military historian, director of the New York State Military Museum, and it's odd that the two greatest heroes of mine in New York military history both end up propped against the tree. The first is Nicholas Herkimer at the Battle of Oriskany, who takes remember, the Indians are normally beating us every time we go up against them. He takes the opportunity, when he's wounded in the leg, he has himself propped up against the tree, and he tells his assistants, his aides, I will face the enemy. He's this Dutchman with his long pipe, and he's sitting there, propped up against the tree, saying, now, take the opportunity here, one man lay down, and the other fire, and then you switch. And this way, no one will ever, the Indians will never be able to, and we actually win the Battle of Oriskany. Bloody, probably the bloodiest battle of the Revolution. And that changes the course of history because the English can't converge on Albany, and they can't split off New England from the rest of the colonies. So that's the one guy. The other guy up against the tree is Thomas Baker, a sergeant. Well, actually, if he hadn't have won the Medal of Honor, would probably have been thrown in jail in the stockade because he was a hellion. And he had gone, in Hawaii, he had gone all on his own. But anyway, during the Battle of the Saipan, when the Japanese are pushing in so hard in the last big banzai attack, he's wounded. And a buddy picks him up and starts to pull him back, and the buddy gets wounded. But he picks him up again, and at this point, Baker says, I don't want anybody else getting wounded on my account. Leave me behind. All I want is a cigarette and a 45 with a full clip and one in the chamber. And
which one is what? Seven in the clip and one in the chamber.
8. Yeah. So takes the Americans 2 days to push back into the area, and when they find Baker, he's up against this palm tree. He's got a burnout cigarette in one hand. The slide is locked all the way back. The 45's empty. There are 8 shell casings, and there are 8 dead Japanese in front of them. What a way to go!
Boys of glory.
Yeah. And that.
That's Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. Same thing.
Yeah.
That's a great movie.
I always love that moment where he's just popping with the 45 at the tank figure, and I got nothing left to lose. And the last round goes off, and the tank blows up, and you can, just before he dies, you see this look of amazement.
What the hell?
That actually happened to me. I was training.
Well, that's when the plane came.
Yeah.
It was the plane guy.
I was training recruits at Fort Sill, and I was introducing them to the M16. And they were firing for the first time at distant targets. And I said, no, okay, now fire and see what effect it has on the target. Just at that moment, an artillery unit got their math mixed up, and they dropped a whole line of shells right on the edge of the firing range.
Oh my God.
So these guys go bam, 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 and then the targets go kaboom. So now I got all these farm boys going, Yahoo! And I'm going,
Where's that
get
beer
down,
rifle?
get down! You know, grabbing the phone to range control, yelling, ceasefire, ceasefire.
Oh.
Not bad from the French Indian War up to Saipan. Pretty good in 35 seconds or less.
Plus up to the M16 era.
That's right.
That's great.
We did it right.
We did, that was good.
See?
That was good. So what was your top rank?
Lieutenant Colonel.
That's good rank.
Not bad. I came in as a private and worked my way
Really?
up. Yes, I enlisted. Actually had an appointment to West Point, but I decided I didn't want to, be told what to study in college. So I turned it down. I went to Stony Brook, and 2 years later, I just decided to enter the Army. So I went in as a private and worked my way up to staff sergeant in an officer candidate school, and got commissioned. And it was a great life. I'd recommend it to anybody. Always something different every day.
My uncle was a 2-star admiral, and he did not go to Annapolis. He advanced on his merit, went to OCS, and started out at the dead bottom, and Lieutenant JG, I think eventually gets a 2-star. When he made admiral, it's amazing to me that the greeting card people can come up with the absolute appropriate card for every occasion. So I find this card. It says, congratulations, what you did was a magnificent achievement. And it's Jean-Luc Picard on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, right? You open it up, and inside it says, I can't believe you didn't attend the academy.
You know how true that is? In the Army, about maybe 49% of our generals are non-West Pointers. But in the Navy, it's pretty much, if you don't have the academy rank, you don't get to be admiral.
Yeah, well, he ended up in charge of the surface reserve fleet of the United States, so he
Pretty good.
He did pretty good. Yep. This is Laura Ann, my granddaughter. Laura Ann and I have a date later today.
Where are you going?
Oh, how nice.
One of our favorite movies is coming out in 3D today.
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast.
All right.
Ooh, wow.
And we're going to go see it, aren't we?
You going in costume or?
Are you going to go as Belle? She is Belle. Don't you think she looks like Belle? Yes, she does.
Where's the plane?
A couple places in Rotterdam and the new theaters in Schenectady too, I guess. So I think we're going to go to Rotterdam because it's just a little bit closer.
Is mom going to, or is this just
Yeah.
grandpa day?
In 3D, right?
Okay.
What do you think? Plus, she's got her good news note from Mrs. Hitty
No
today.
chaperoning?
This is a very rarely given out, especially you have to do something exceptional. It's kind of like the Distinguished Service Cross,
Oh, okay.
right?
With oak leaf cluster.
With oak leaf cluster. Yeah.
Speaking
So
of
you're gonna see, like,
service crosses, you get those things framed up?
I got it all together. I've just got to figure out when is a good time to do it with the council.
Yeah, okay. Take a long date.
What are you talking about?
She's
It's very nice. Gavin and Misha donated the original 1919 Amsterdam Veterans Medal.
Right.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
That I based the design of the current Veteran Service Medal on.
Right.
So we have a picture of Gavin, your father. So
My grandfather.
Yeah, your grandfather, actually. Yeah, your grandfather. And then also Misha performed while Misha was performing at the first time the new medal was awarded, he also was wearing his father.
I recall that. I think I put it on my blog.
Yeah,
Actually. Yes.
and also he was wearing the first number of the new medal. So we had it all. We're having it all framed up, and we're going to present it to the city.
Hey.
Good shot. And
It's bad news.
and they'll be up hanging in the Common Council chamber next to where the city charter is.
Very good.
Nice.
Yes.
Speaking of stuff like that, did I mention we have some calendars left?
Yes,
Yeah. Well,
14
not on the area. Then. No.
If anybody didn't get a Amsterdam 2012 calendar, there's still about a dozen left.
Yeah. Are there any left here?
I have one left here.
What, the one on the
That's
wall.
yours.
Well, no, it's fine. I'll sell it. If somebody is needing it, I will sell it.
All right.
Yeah, we got like 3 at Dolce on the south side, and a few at Bookhound, a few at Peddler's Wagon. So if you didn't get one and you want one, this is the week to get one.
Now's the time to get it before it's too late, and before January gets much deeper.
We may have a couple to sell at the Historic Amsterdam League meeting.
Annual meeting.
Annual meeting.
First annual meeting.
First annual meeting. First ever annual meeting. Wednesday, the 18th, 6:30, City Hall. Be there or be square. If you ever wanted to be involved in Amsterdam history.
Well, I guess, yeah, that's a Historic Amsterdam League. Hello, Dave. We're the Historic Amsterdam League.
Oh, you're making reference to the computer. I knew
Yes.
that.
Daisy, Daisy.
Would you like to play a game of chess? No, just open the airlock.
I can't do that, Dave. That's a great movie.
That's a great scene, anyway.
Just remember, 2001: A Space Odyssey is now history as opposed to futurific.
Right, right.
And also remember, if you ever end up in a conversation with somebody who talks like Hal, leave quickly. I've known people like that.
Yeah.
In fact, the one here in Amsterdam. Oh, it's a really good day today, isn't it?
You're looking uncomfortable, Dave. I saw what you said, Dave.
There's a good takeoff on that in the cartoon Futurama, where she goes in and she's pulling the core out, like the memory elements out of the core, like in 2012. Only they're soda cans, so she's like pulling the rings off. Yeah, it's good science fiction movies are hard to come by.
Well, that was, for its time, pretty fantastic. The special effects still hold up. Well, I got to tell you, my son, the special effects expert, saw The Thief of Baghdad when he was home for Christmas. He had never seen that, the 1939, and he was very impressed with the special effects of The Thief of Baghdad. He says, this had to be done with a green screen. I didn't know they had green screens like that.
There are some amazing, San Francisco.
San Francisco, to me, can still never be topped. Never
No.
be topped.
Especially with Jeanette MacDonald at the end singing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
You know that movie? It is... I think we've talked about this on the show before, but it's the first 2/3 of the movie are interesting MGM soap opera,
But then,
and then just when the plot is just kind of
Gonna fall apart.
it doesn't matter. None of the plot matters, and it is just sensational. My mother saw that when she was about what'd she say? I think she was like 11 years old. I think when that came out,
Scared the dickens
And
out of her?
Scared the dickens out of her the rest of her life. She would still talk about and things have calmed down, and all of a sudden the second wave comes through, and the street opens up and swallows up these people.
Yeah.
Oh God! Interesting thing about the San Francisco earthquake is that an awful lot of illegal Chinese immigrants thereafter claimed that they had lived in San Francisco where their citizenship papers were lost.
Sure.
And a friend of mine in college had a very old father, and he had actually been in this country before the San Francisco earthquake, smuggled in by way of Cuba in a boat, in a secret compartment in a boat or something like that, and they came into this country, and then the San Francisco earthquake came around, and they were all legal.
Yeah, there was interesting discussion on immigration on the radio the other day, and somebody was putting out that old canard about WAP standing for without papers.
Yeah.
This is not where it comes from at all. And
Tell us where it comes from.
it comes from the Italian slang phrase guapo, meaning big shot or tough guy.
Right.
And you know, like you'd hey tough guy, how you doing? You know, hey guapo. And non-Italians would misunderstand, and it became. But you know, if you even think about the story.
What about Guinea? Where does that come from?
No, that's
How about Dago?
How were your chips?
Go ahead, tell me.
I don't know.
Mick?
Did mom?
Well, Mick is pretty easy.
Pretty obvious, yeah.
That's pretty easy. Yeah.
But yeah, immigration is always.
I never heard that Waco.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yep. It's supposed to date to about 1910 in America. Just talking about Chinese immigrants. I had a friend of the family who used to tell a story about how his ancestors got renamed, like something like Giuseppe Morricone, because he was standing behind an Italian guy at Ellis Island. And when a Chinese guy came up and they asked him what his name is, he said Sam Ten.
Yeah. That's just a setup. That's just he hooked us. But that actually, something very similar happened to a friend of mine. He has no idea. His name is Jerry Goldman now. He sat next to me in law school. But his Goldman ancestor, it was his grandfather or great grandfather, didn't speak a word of English coming over, and what they were advising him was just listen to what the guy says in front of you and repeat all his answers.
Yeah.
And that's how he became Goldman, and that no one ever knew what their real name was.
That happened to my wife's grandfather. He lived in Fonda, and he wanted to work on the railroad. He didn't know how to spell his name. So the guy in front of him says, just tell him your name is Joe Sandy. He's very easy to spell. So he was known for 50 years in Fonda as Joe Sandy.
Well, I was just talking about this with George Sandy yesterday. The family name was DeNigris, and it was very they pointed to a sign on the store, which was Sandy's store or something like that, and that's how they became Sandys.
We used to joke in my family that our name had been Schwartz, but we changed it to von Hassel during the war.
Now, are you one of the phony Vons like Baron von Steuben in the war, who was really Harry Steuben from the Bronx or something?
A Pomerania? No, it's the Von title in my name goes back to the First Crusade.
That's good enough. Yeah. That's how far back the goings go too.
Given for.
That's pretty good, huh? The name goes back to the First Crusade.
Wow.
Yeah, one of my ancestors rode with the First Crusaders in capturing Jerusalem.
What is Santa's favorite present?
Serious?
Yeah.
We were knighted for services rendered by the Holy Roman Emperor, and the family crest is a oak tree on a purple field.
We got an oak tree.
Oak tree?
You got a snake on it?
No snake.
Okay, we got a snake.
Yes.
And the name actually means Hassel in German is hazelwood or hazel tree. And if you go to a section in northwest Germany, there's Hasselfeld, Hasselberg, Hasselstein, those are all the old family, that was the old baronial estate. And I remember once I was coming out of work at late at night, and this New York City cop pulls me over. So I hand over all my stuff over the shoulder, because it's dark, he's got the flashlight on me. And all of a sudden I hear him say, "How the hell can I give somebody with your name a ticket?" So now I turn around, and his last name is Hassel, without the von. So he says, "You think your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather used to know my great-great-great-great-grandfather?" And I was thinking, and he didn't say it, "Yeah, my great-great-great-grandfather used to own your great-great." Well, I'm not going to tell that to New York City cop who's got his ticket book out.
On on the Dwyer side of my family, I never knew exactly where they came from. I knew they were in County Tipperary someplace. And over the years, the goings of County Tipperary were Protestant landholders, and the Dwyers were very Catholic. So they met over here, but they're both from the same neighborhood. And I don't know how that came about. So I never knew where they came from. But over the years, I've been corresponding with this descendant of the Protestant gentry of County Tipperary on the going stuff, and I finally find out that my Dwyer people were the worthless tenants of his ancestors. So I said, "Yeah, your people owned my people."
There's an interesting thing happened to me when I was in, as I said, I was an enlisted man before I was an officer. And the defense minister of West Germany was coming to visit Fort Sill because that's where the German rocket troops used to train. And I was a private there. And not an ancestor, but the German side of the family that continued on after my part of the family came to America. I guess you'd call him an uncle. Really, technically, I suppose he's a cousin, but because we always thought of uncle, was Ulrich von Hassel. He was one of the men who conspired to kill Hitler in 1944.
Whoa!
And Ulrich, the prized possession of my father was the diaries of Ulrich von Hassel. And I have a picture of him on trial for the SS court, and he was sentenced and he was executed. He was supposed to be
They actually gave him a trial, huh?
a very short one,
Yeah.
which basically consisted of an SS judge named Strasser, yelling at him as "You're a disgrace, you're a disgrace." You can see him.
And the Nazis, being the Nazis, kept pictures of all this stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, they were even worse pictures. But the story is that most of the conspirators, the families were killed, except for Rommel.
Well,
they cut a deal.
Yeah. They cut a deal, commit suicide.
Yeah. Well, what happened with most of the other families of the conspirators were killed. They never killed my German relatives because they knew that Ulrich von Hassel had kept a diary, but the SS kept following his wife to see where she had hidden it, and they couldn't find it. The son, Wolf Woolley, was already on the Eastern Front. He wasn't expected to live. The daughter had married an Italian diplomat and was in Italy, couldn't touch her. So they kept following the wife around, and by this time the Americans came and took that part of Germany. So Random House publishes the book about a year later.
Wow.
And it's very interesting. And that's where, in German they have these compound words where they just bang them together like correct.
Oh, yeah. You just look at the name of the street.
Yeah. And this is where I learned what Bodenlesse Schweren means, which is roughly, you can't translate it exactly, but it means bottomless filth, which is the way my uncle described the Nazis. But anyway, so his son, Wolf Woolley, survives, and his son becomes the defense minister of West Germany. So there I am, and I'm mopping up the barracks.
So wait a minute. So this is the grandson of the Hitler conspirator?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm mopping up in the barracks, and in come this Secretary of the Army, Defense Minister of West Germany, Commanding General, and he looks over at me, and I'm like, "Hello, Uncle Wolf." And you go back to mopping, and they're like, "You know him?" And I said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's kind of like cousin, uncle. I don't know how to describe it." But in fact, his son later was assigned to the United Nations, And another son is a prominent photojournalist now. He wrote a book on West Point. It's funny how these things kind of run in.
Did you actually know him before that moment? I mean, had you met him before? Or
The family had corresponded, but I'd never actually met the guy. I've never actually been to Germany. I'd like to go sometime, but I've never actually.
Really, you've never been?
No, never been.
Even I've been to Germany.
I went there on my honeymoon.
I'm told there's a Schloss von Hassel someplace that's now an orphanage. I'd like to see it, but I've never been there.
Wow. You probably got an estate coming to you.
I don't think so. I think we that's why we're in America. It's second son of a second son, and you end up with basically
Seconds.
Yeah, we ended up in the nautical paint business.
You know, the late Tony Casellas always told me that he was the pretender to the throne of Lithuania.
Really?
I said, don't you have an older brother? He said he abdicated. He told me I could have it. He told me I could be the pretender.
Yeah, you're right. If there was such a thing as hereditary titles for,
sure,
then that would be my older brother, not me. No, I think
you'd be a lesser noble, though. I mean, you'd still.
We were talking here one day. I'd seen an article on. They had tracked down the woman who is the last in line for the throne of England. Oh. And there's actually a statute from the time of Queen Anne, I guess, saying what the criteria are to be. It can only be from a descendant of this person in this line, and then they can't be Catholic. And so she was like, what was it, like 563rd or some crazy thing like that? 563rd and last in line for the throne of England. She's like a librarian somewhere in Germany. Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
But in England, they just did pass changes in the law that if he has a daughter, she'll be first in line for the throne. Change that. And also, they are allowed to marry a Catholic now.
But they can't be Catholic.
But they can't be Catholic.
They can't be Catholic.
They still can't be Catholic.
They can't.
They're the protector of the faith and titular head of the Church of England.
Yeah.
Whatever is left of it. I was down in New York last week, and we stopped in on this Episcopal church, let's see, Mary the Virgin or something like that. Episcopal church. It is as high Episcopal as you could possibly get. I thought I was walking into the cream of the Roman Catholic churches from 1934.
Sure.
They had the tabernacle. They had the altar facing away. They had all these side chapels, including chapels of the Sacred Heart, all the saints. Well, they had a confessional. I mean, it was absolutely remarkable.
I was raised as a high Episcopalian.
That's as high as you can get. That's and the water and the holy water founts everywhere.
And my Catholic girlfriend always can't stand it when I say, when I was growing up, the priest, and she says, "You mean minister?" I was like, "No," and in a high Anglican, it's a priest. He would say Mass, and she said, "No, you would conduct services," and I'd say, "No, it's Mass." In fact, for years I had a problem in that I could hear it in Elizabethan English in my head,
right.
Or I can hear it in Latin, but I can't. Just modern English doesn't work.
Well, the new Catholic Missal came out on the first Sunday of Advent, and the language is so much better. I'm not just talking about the responses. I'm talking about the ordinary prayers. And some point they dumbed them down about 35, 40 years ago.
After Vatican II.
But it was a bit after that. It was quite a bit after, because originally they kind of kept the responses are really going back to the interim that we already did. When they first was in English, it was exactly the way it is now, despite what they're telling you. But the prayers are just, we humbly beseech you. I go to Jim White's funeral last week, which was, I guess, middle Episcopal. I don't know. It certainly wasn't low Episcopal. But it wasn't high Episcopal. But it was. But their service was actually seemed more Catholic than the Novus Ordo Mass. Yeah, it really was, and the language, the use of the English language is just breathtakingly beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
So anyway, I'm glad we've now got the Anglican rite in the church, so that those who were brought up in that can go and enjoy it, you know. And the rest of us can go and marvel, I guess.
The primary difference between a high Anglican or high Episcopalian Mass and a Catholic Mass, as I knew growing up, is an Anglican Mass, more incense, more incense, and you sing all the verses of every.
Well, that was the other thing. Yes, I definitely sang all the verses. It was okay. Matter of fact, I had somebody sitting next to me who, you know, had kind of a schedule. How long is this going to take? I said, I should run about an hour and 10 minutes, and then we get to the third verse of the opening hymn before getting to the fourth, fifth, and sixth. Maybe an hour 15. Before much longer, it was 2 hours. And that's what it was.
My father was raised Roman Catholic, and my mother was Methodist, so they decided they met halfway, historically, you know.
Historically, it's exactly halfway.
Right. So anyway, but Dad ended up being the chief warden of the vestry, and but he never lost some of his habits, and one of which was you don't sing every verse. So, but I had my priest was actually from England. I had an English Anglican priest as a kid, and what he would do is he'd sing every verse, but my father would be in the first pew, and by the time they hit the third verse, you'd hear this loud thump, thunk, and he would just stand there and stare at him. I'm finished.
Rochelle Coutinho, who of course is blind, but leads the contemporary choir at St. Mary's. I don't think it's the current dog she had. The last seeing eye dog she had. She gets to the end of the second verse of the closing hymn. The dog gets up, shakes, and then all of a sudden they go into the third verse, and the dog looks up at her, looks around, goes right back. But the dog knew when it was supposed to end. All right. Well, I think that about does it for today. This was certainly offbeat second half hour, and I think extremely interesting, whether anybody else does or not.
Very interesting.
So I'm Bob Going. Thank you, our city historian, Mr. Murdoch, Mr. Nicosia, and we hope to be back next week with more of the show with no name.